GreenRoc Mining is AIM-listed, and its main focus is the development of the Amitsoq Graphite Project in Southern Greenland, which has a JORC resource of 23 million tonnes at a grade of 20.41% carbon, making it one of the highest grade graphite deposits in the world. GreenRoc aims to provide the European market with high-quality graphite for use in the manufacture of electric vehicles batteries, which contain more graphite by weight than any other raw materials. Stefan Bernstein, CEO of GreenRoc, joins us tonight to explain why Amitsoq is well positioned to support and benefit from the race for net zero. Welcome, Stefan.
Thank you, Donald. And graphite is really a vital raw material for the energy transition. And at Amitsoq in South Greenland, GreenRoc Mining has a large deposit with world-class grades. And we are currently developing that towards production. And so what I'll be presenting today to you is the details of this project, and also present to you the reason why GreenRoc is a great investment case. Right, let me just see if I can switch the slides here, get through the disclaimers. So GreenRoc Mining has assets solely in Greenland. Amitsoq is the most advanced of our projects. It's lying in the southern tip of Greenland, and therefore we are presently putting all our resources towards forwarding that project. We are listed on AIM in London under the ticker GROC. Our share price was yesterday of 4.25 and the market cap at around 6.2 million pounds. So in this presentation, I'll first describe to you why graphite is such a vital raw material, and then go on to explain to you what it is we have in the ground in Greenland and what it is we are developing. Something about the processing of graphite, which is not trivial, and then on to some news concerning the European Union, Europe, and Greenland, and then finally ending with the roadmap to production. So graphite. Well, graphite is used in anodes of most of the current day modern batteries, particularly the lithium-based batteries. So it is graphite that makes up more than a fifth of the battery weight. And that translates into electric car batteries, typically containing about 60 kilograms, if not more, graphite. And the graphite that is being used to produce the anodes in the electric vehicle batteries has to be processed into what's called spherical graphite. So in the lower panel there, you see natural flake graphite as it comes out of the ground after it's been refined. Then it has to be processed into this coated spherical purified graphite, which you see to the right, these small potato-shaped particles. China is sitting on the largest part of the world's production. More than 60% of world's production of graphite takes place in China, and all of the processing. That means that the battery industry that is developing today in Europe relies fully on supply of this spherical graphite from China. Right, so another important aspect of graphite is that it cannot easily be recycled. That means that the graphite that is being used in the electric vehicles today, in 10 years' time or so, when the batteries are being recycled, you can take out the copper, the nickel, the cobalt, and so forth, and reuse it. Well, graphite has some physical properties that are very well defined and meet some strict specifications. So while it can be recycled into the use of the steel industry, for instance, it cannot be used as battery-grade graphite again. That means that the demand for graphite is going to continue to rise in the years to come. So the graphite anode supply chain looks like this. In the white bar there, you have the mining, where you take the graphite ore out of the ground. You process it into graphite concentrate, which is then undergoing a processing, quite advanced processing into that involves micronization, classification, spheronisation, purification, and coating before it eventually ends up as anode-ready material. So our business is to set up production of graphite from our deposit in Greenland, ship that concentrate into a processing plant that we are setting up in Northern Europe to provide the industry with anode material. The market for the anode material is fast and growing. Across Europe, by 2030, that is in only 7 years' time, there'll be more than 40 so-called gigafactories in production. They will have a capacity of nearly 1 terawatt hour, which in turn demands more than 1 million tons of graphite. And what you can see is also like in the upper right-hand side panel, you can see the global demand for graphite is set to rise by 400% in the coming decade. And therefore also the prices of anode materials is set to rise correspondingly over the next 10 years as forecasted by, in this case, Fast Market in the middle panel. So on to what we have in Greenland, Amitsoq. It is a world-class deposit. It's sitting on the southern tip of the long island you see in the satellite image to the right at the red diamond. It is surrounded by deep water fjords that provides access for ships year-round. It's ice-free year-round. It's about a little less than 20 kilometers northeast of the town of Nanortalik. And importantly, Amitsoq was a producing mine about 100 years ago. It closed in 1922, and that attests really to the high quality and the high grades of the ore. There are several satellite deposits nearby that have not been drilled, but have similarly high grades of graphite. And they are all under GreenRoc's license. We have conducted 2 stages of drilling and arrived at a resource of 23 million tons, as you can see in the table, with an average grade of more than 20% graphite. That is sufficient graphite to sustain mining for several decades. And that grade really puts us in the top league of projects under development worldwide, as you can see on the orange bars. Also important here is that the value of our company is presently very low compared to our peers. If you take the value of our company measured in terms of dollars per ton of market cap, expressed as dollars per ton of contained graphite resource, as you can see in the green bars, we come out as the lowest of our peers. So there's serious growth potential. A quick view and the ore bodies here. This is a view of the island towards the east. You can see 2 graphite ore bodies dipping towards you. A red one, the lower graphite layer, and the orange one is the upper graphite layer. Just to show you the consistency of the grades across here, and it's simple ore geometry, which makes for easy mining. So we have conducted a series of test work on the ore. We've taken the graphite ore samples of that and provided to ProGraphite, which is a German specialist lab that's conducted some test work for us, showing that it can easily be upgraded to graphite concentrate by simple flotation. And we have then taken that graphite concentrate, which we envisage will be our product from our mining operation in Greenland, and process it through the various stages of micronization and spheronisation and purification and so forth, and arrived at the beautifully looking spheronized graphite sample that you can see to the right, which has a purity of more than 99.97, which is certainly battery grade material. So we also benefit from the close proximity to Northern Europe. We have about 4 to 5 days of shipping time away from Northern Europe compared to present day delivery of graphite from China, which is more than 40 days. Certainly there are big African deposits also, but they're typically about 30 days of shipping away. There are certain other projects in Northern Europe under development at the moment, mostly in Scandinavia. One producing mine in northern Norway that is set to produce about 15,000 tons per year and not likely to produce a lot more than that. So the other ones are possibly coming on stream also in the next over the next decade. We have planned an annual mining rate of 400,000 tons. And at 20% graphite, that will yield about 80,000 tons of graphite concentrate per year. So across all these deposits, if they all come stream, we'll be able to deliver about 300,000 tons of graphite concentrate to the European market per year by 2030. And comparing that to the demand of between, well, over 1 million tons of graphite. I'll also mention that we have received a letter of support from the European Raw Materials Alliance stating that our graphite resource is of global importance, and we strongly expect also that our project will become a so-called strategic project. And that is important because recently the European Commission proposed a Critical Raw Materials Act that states a series of critical raw materials as strategic, and one of them is natural graphite. And the proposal demands that at least 10% of the consumption in the EU has to come from domestic production, and at least 40% of the processing has to be taking place in the European Union or in Europe. And this Critical Raw Materials Act passed the European Parliament by overwhelming majority last month, and it's set to be agreed finally before Christmas. The European Raw Materials Alliance also issued a call for action recently here, stating more than 50 investment cases across Europe for supply of critical raw materials for the energy transition. There are only 2 graphite projects identified in this call for action, and one of them is GreenRoc Mining's project in Greenland. There's a series of interesting figures and numbers in that call for action that paints a picture here, and you can see this is just one example here that in addition to lithium, we can see a growth in demand that is very significant for graphite. For lithium is more than 13 times growth between 2020 and 2030. Second to that is graphite at 5.3, much higher than any of the other raw materials that goes into these batteries and high intensity magnets and so forth, such as nickel, cobalt, rare earth elements, and so forth. That kind of underlines or highlights the importance of graphite. Greenland is a great place to develop raw materials projects. It has a very well-regulated, mining-friendly jurisdiction. It's so that the social impact assessment, environmental impact assessments, and impact benefit agreements are all embedded into the mining law. There's one door policy here, so you only deal with one authority. And you can basically tick all the boxes along as you develop your project, as long as you're following all these various guidelines, there is no real barrier for us to receive an exploitation permit. So the roadmap to production looks like this. We are basically developing our project along two streams here. One is the production of graphite from our mine in Greenland. That is the upper road here, where we, this year, 2023, got the resource definition. We are presently working on the preliminary economic assessment. The environmental and social impact assessments are ongoing. And we are presently also conducting a flotation of a bulk sample to provide us with graphite concentrate for further test work. And then it'll be followed in 24 with exploitation permitting, the PFS, onto DFS and start construction end of 25, construction year 26, with start production in 27. And parallel with that, we're developing the capacity to spheronize our graphite concentrate from Greenland. We are presently developing further test work. We are doing some electrochemical tests, and we expect to be embarking on a feasibility study shortly. And that will then end in a DFS pilot plant construction 25, and then on to construction 26. So that by the time the first shipment leaves Greenland with graphite concentrate from our mine, there will be a processing plant to receive this graphite concentrate and turn it into active anode material for the gigafactories. And the PA, this is my last slide, which we expect to be delivered this month, contains all the, well, it's basically a scoping study. It contains details of mining rates, mining methods, processing plants, power needs, and so forth. It also has an economical model with a cash flow model and so forth that has all the metrics for the project. And that will be the concluding slide of my presentation.
Okay, Stefan, thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much indeed. So what would the next steps be for Amitsoq? Talk me through the next 6 to 9 months for Amitsoq as a project.
Right. So firstly, we would like to conduct or collect another bulk sample, a larger bulk sample, probably in the order of 10 to 20 ton, because we have experienced quite a bit of interest for our product from various potential off-takers. So we basically exhausted the relatively small samples we started out with, and we need to provide them with materials so they can do their own test work. So that would be one thing. The next larger point in our work program would be to conduct a bit further drilling to constrain the resource further, possibly also expanding it, and some geotechnical drilling, which is required to conduct the pre-feasibility study, the PFS, which we expect to be carried out next fall.
And strategically, is it important to actually build your resource, or do you have sufficient as it stands? What's your thinking on that?
So I would say that presently we're quite happy that we got sufficient resource that we can start thinking about what a mine would look like here. That's basically why we are now conducting the PA and can see that we, by this time next year, is embarking on the PFS. Mm-hmm. But of course, that is a jump from the PA to the PFS. The PFS requires a bit more certainty and technical aspects of the ore that we can only achieve by geotechnical drilling.
Okay, let me ask you about potential investors and partners. You talked about offtake agreements and people coming for samples and supplies. So people have been approaching you. Talk us through that interest. That's absolutely fascinating.
Yes, that's of course important. With such a project here, graphite is unlike copper, for instance, where there's like a spot market. graphite is usually sold on contracts, and therefore you need to know your customer, and you need to know the specifications of the requirements. And they are very strict because the batteries have certain, of course, requirements. I would say that when we started more seriously to talk with potential off-takers last year, in the beginning, there was I wouldn't say it was difficult to find them and get their attention, but it was not until we announced the new resource here that people start realizing how big this deposit really is, and they were interested also after we could demonstrate that the graphite ore can be turned into the spherical graphite, that they started to be asking for a sample of the material. So we have now sent material to some potential off-takers. It's come back quite positive, so it certainly lives up to the expectations. But we need to send more material because they like to conduct further test work, and you also need to prove eventually, which is some years from now, that you can deliver consistent quantity over some time and also in amounts that fulfill their needs. So that's why we need to build at some point a pilot processing plant.
Is that the spheronisation plant you were talking about?
Yes, it is. That is not standard.
Tell us as much about that as you possibly can, please, Stefan. I understand that some of it may be work in progress, but just tell us what your thinking is on that spheronisation plant. It's going to be in Northern Europe. Where might it be in Northern Europe? Just tell me any detail you can about it.
Yes. So today, if we were to process our graphite into anode material, we'll have to ship it to China. There is no such processing plant in Europe. So obviously there's a lot of development work that needs to be done, but we have very good consultants that help us out with this. So the feasibility study will not only look at state-of-the-art processing techniques that are available in China, and you can purchase these spheronisation units on Alibaba and other platforms. It's certainly possible to set up such a processing plant. Other companies have started doing that. There's one in Australia. There's one in North America, in the US. So it's certainly possible to go that route. But we are also interested in looking at what European manufacturers of spheronisation equipment can provide us with. There are 3 German manufacturers of spheronisation equipment that are developing units for processing of graphite. And we are currently speaking to all 3 of them in terms of what they can produce, the quality of the material that they can yield, and also, which is very important, the recovery, you can say, because the Chinese are very good at processing into high quality spherical graphite, but they lose a lot of material under that way. So typically the yield is only, say, 40-50% of the graphite concentrate you put in, whereas some of the European manufacturers at least indicate that we can achieve between 60 and 70% yield, which is, of course, saving a lot of material. Mm-hmm. So those are the things that we are presently studying in much greater detail, and the feasibility study that we'll be conducting will set up a variety of possibilities. What are the costs? What are the energy requirements? What are the yield? What purification process should we go? The hydrofluoric acid route? Should we go through the caustic fusion route, and so forth? So there's that will be. It's a bit of a. I would say it's more advanced than setting up a processing plant and a mine, because that's much more standard. But on the other hand, we know what we want to achieve in the end, and we have several options. So it will take some time, but it's certainly a great upside to be able to produce spherical graphite, so we have a virtually integrated production of anode material.
Okay, my last question comes from Dr. Mark Schneider. He's asked several questions with many apologies, Mark. We're not going to answer them all, unfortunately. But in terms of, you've asked several interesting questions. How big is the GreenRoc team, Stefan? And when are you planning to hire and for what positions? Presumably with so much work, so much expansion, feasibility study, so on and so forth, you will need a team to do it. What are your thoughts on staffing?
Yes, so we have a great team at GreenRoc Mining. Across the board, we have a broad range of expertises. I'm a geologist by training. I've worked with Greenland all my life. And then, of course, as the board, we have several other expertises. Obviously, when it comes to more specific work we want to conduct, we have allied ourselves with some very senior consultants that provides us with a lot of good work, but we are also currently considering expanding. We are presently doing some hiring, which I can't reveal exactly what it is about, but certainly particularly looking into this processing plant. That is much more work that we can conduct, of course, just across the board and through the use of consultants.
Stefan, that's absolutely terrific. I'm going to end it there. Thank you so much. I appreciate there's a lot of things that are sub judice. You can't actually talk about everything. Things are commercially sensitive. I really appreciate you for coming on and being as open as you have been. It's been a real pleasure to have you on tonight. Thank you so much.